There are 13 SUVs on the road that will roll clean past 200,000 miles and keep right on going, and a few of them go a whole lot further than that. Some rigs can fly and roll and wade through water, but the real question, the one that keeps money in your pocket, is which ones go the distance without a fortune in repairs. There's a study out of a company called IC Cars that dug through more than 11 million used cars sold back in 2020, just to see which ones were still on the road at 200,000 miles and up. And the SUV sitting at number one on my list crosses that mark better than 16 times as often as the average one. It is the closest thing to a rig that flat refuses to die that money can buy, and I'll show you why at the end. For years you've been told an SUV is a throwaway thing. Lease it, drive it, trade it before the warranty runs out, do it all again. That's the story the counter sells. But a handful of these were built like an anvil, on a real truck frame with an engine meant to see 300,000 miles. We didn't lose the durable ones. The market just buried them under monthly payments and shiny screens, so you'd forget they ever existed. I'm Earl, and I've turned wrenches on diesel trucks for 40 years, so hear me on one thing. This is my own hard-won opinion, not buying advice, so do your own homework before you put money down. If you like an old diesel man telling you straight what's built to last and what's a trap, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps me keep making these. Now let me show you the ones they got right, starting down at number 13. Number 13 is the Honda Pilot. Now the Pilot didn't top that study, so I'm putting it here on my own say-so after 40 years of watching them come through the bay. That 3.5-liter Honda V6, the one they call the J Series, is a genuinely good motor. It isn't turbocharged, so there's no little snail bolted on waiting to fail you at 100,000 miles. Keep the oil clean and mind the timing belt when the book says, and these things haul a family for 15, 18 years without a fuss. The interior is plain and honest, seats up to 8, and parts are on the shelf at every store in the country. Here's the thing folks miss on the Pilot. Because it never had a flashy reputation, it never carried a flashy price, new or used, so you get real Honda engineering for the money of a lesser rig. I've got a customer, a school teacher, who's on her second one and swears she'll never buy anything else because the first one crossed 220,000 miles before she handed it down to her boy. Your job with a used Pilot, get up under it and look for a leak or a wet spot at the front of the engine, because a neglected timing belt is the one thing that'll bite you, and on this motor, a snap belt bends valves and ruins your day. If the belt's been done and the records show it, buy it and don't look back. And if a car-shaped SUV like the Pilot can go the distance, wait until you see what a real truck frame underneath will do. Number 12 is the Nissan Armada, and this one gets ignored because folks forget it exists. Underneath, it's a real body on-frame truck, and that 5.5-liter V8, the one Nissan calls the VK56, is a stout old motor. It isn't fancy, and it isn't thrifty on gas, but it is built heavy, and heavy lasts. I've seen these pull a loaded trailer for years and shrug it off. You can buy one cheap because nobody's chasing them, which is exactly the kind of bargain I like. Think about what that means for a second. The very thing that makes folks skip it, the plain badge and the thirsty motor, is the thing that drops the price on a truck that'll run as long as rigs costing twice as much. That's the discount for knowing better. Whatever you do, don't walk past a clean Armada just because the badge isn't popular. Check the front suspension for worn bushings, listen for a whine from the rear end, and make sure the brakes aren't warped, because a heavy rig is hard on brakes. If it drives tight and stops straight, you've found a lot of truck for short money. Which brings me to the Toyota half of this list, and Toyota is where the real mileage lives. Number 11 is the Toyota Highlander, and I mean the plain gas V6, not the hybrid we'll get to later. That 2GR V6 is one of the finest 6-cylinders Toyota ever poured, the same engine family that lives under a Lexus. No turbo, a timing chain instead of a belt, and a reputation among mechanics for simply not braking. Folks think it's a soccer mom rig and walk right past it, and that snobbery is your discount. Test drive one, take it up to highway speed, and feel for any shudder through the seat, because a smooth one at that speed is a healthy one. Get the maintenance records if you can. And speaking of Toyota building things to outlive their owners, let me show you the quiet one that almost nobody knows about. Number 10 is the Lexus GX 460. Here's the secret the badge hides. Under that leather and that Lexus name sits a Toyota Land Cruiser Prado, a real off-road frame with a 4 6/10 liter V8 that will run near forever. It costs the factory a fortune to build, and it shows, but on the used lot, people see the luxury badge and assume it'll bleed them dry on repairs. It won't, not if you service it. This is the thinking man's durable SUV. Check that the timing chain has been quiet and the suspension isn't leaking, and pay a fair price, because a well-kept GX is a 200,000-mile machine wearing a suit. Now we leave my picks behind and get into the ones that study put numbers to, starting with the big luxury barge that surprised everybody. Number 9 is the Lincoln Navigator. It's a hulking full-size luxury rig, and because it's built on a truck chassis, it's got the bones to go the distance. The study found about 2 6/10% of them still running past the 200,000-mile mark. Now that number sounds small, but for a loaded luxury SUV, that's a strong showing. And here's the part the badge fools you on. A repair outfit called Repair Pal tracks this, and the Navigator's average yearly repair cost actually comes in below average for its class. A strong engine and parts that aren't priced like gold keep this big fellow on the road far longer than folks expect. Owners only bring these in for a surprise repair every couple of years on average, which for a rig this size and this fancy is downright remarkable. Look one over for tired air suspension. That's the known weak spot on the big Fords and Lincolns. Listen for it sitting low or riding rough, because a full air setup gets dear to fix. Some folks swap it for plain steel springs and never worry again. And if a Lincoln can go 200,000, its cousins built for hauling can go further, which is exactly where we're headed. Number 8 is the GMC Yukon and the longer Yukon XL. These are the biggest rigs GMC makes, and they got a reel going over back in 2015, cleaner looks and a nicer inside. About 3.5% of them showed more than 200,000 miles when they changed hands, and a slice of those, about 0.2%, had rolled past 300,000. Think about that. 300,000 miles on a family hauler. They run a 5 3/10 liter V8, making 355 horsepower. They'll seat up to 9, and the whole thing sits on a full-size pickup frame while the rest of the world went to car-like construction. That frame is the reason they last. Look for a worn transmission on the high-mile ones, and if it shifts clean, this is a truck that'll take your whole family down the road for 2 decades. And the next one proves even a gas-sipping hybrid can join this club. Number 7 is the Toyota Highlander Hybrid. And I know a hybrid on a durability list raises an eyebrow, but the study found 3 8/10% of these driven past 200,000 miles, and it's the only one on this whole list built on a car-type frame instead of a truck one. Toyota simply knows how to build things that last, and the hybrid setup, done the Toyota way, holds up. That 2.5-liter 4-cylinder paired with the electric motors is rated around 36 miles to the gallon, city and highway both, which is remarkable for something this size. Whatever you do, don't fear the hybrid battery on a Toyota. They've proven themselves. Have the battery health checked before you buy, and if it's strong, you've got low fuel bills and long life in one package. Now let's get back to the big iron, because the next 3 are police tough. Number 6 is the Chevrolet Tahoe. It's the mechanical twin to that GMC Yukon, so it racks up the miles the same way, and the study backs it. 3 9/10% of used Tahoes sold had passed 200,000 miles. The current generation came along in 2015, and you can get it with a 5 3/10 liter V8 or a bigger 6 2/10. Here's the proof that matters. Police departments all across America run Tahoes as pursuit and patrol rigs, driven hard every single day, chasing, towing, idling for hours. When the law picks a truck to abuse for a living, idling all shift and stomping it between calls, it tells you everything you need to know about how it's built underneath. That 5 3/10 V8 is the same basic engine that's been proven in 1,000,000 pickups. Check the brakes and the transmission on any high miler, feel for a slipping or harsh shift, and buy with confidence. And its longer brother is even more of a legend. Number 5 is the Toyota 4Runner. Some folks flat call this thing indestructible, and after 40 years, I won't argue with them. It's a mid-size rig built on a real truck frame, made for off-road punishment, and about 4 1/10% of them resold had crossed 200,000 miles, with 0.2% still going strong past 300,000. It seats up to 7 and swallows cargo, so it works as a daily rig too. And here's the tell. Toyota sells better than 130,000 new 4Runners a year. And go price a used one, folks are asking near new money for old ones because they know what they've got. That's the market telling you the truth the dealer won't. I had a young man in my bay, heartbroken, because he'd found a 15-year-old 4Runner with 190,000 miles, and the seller wanted more than he thought was fair. I looked it over, and I told him to pay it. That truck had another 200,000 miles in it, easy, and where else are you going to buy a decade of driving that cheap? He paid it. He still sends me a note every year on the anniversary. Look underneath for frame rust in the salt states. That's the one thing that kills these, and if the frame's solid, it'll outlive you. Now we're into the top 4, and this is where the real high milers live. Number 4 is the Ford Expedition, another full-size rig built on a truck. It shares its bones and a lot of its parts with that Lincoln Navigator, which is exactly why both of them landed on this list. The study found 4 9/10% of expeditions driven 200,000 miles or more, and 0.2% still running past 300,000. And no wonder, because underneath it is basically a Ford F-150 work truck wearing SUV clothes. It'll seat 8, carry a mountain of cargo, and tow better than 9,000 pounds, which is a serious number for an SUV. The V8 went away in 2014 for a 3.5-liter turbocharged V6 Ford calls the EcoBoost, and that engine, cared for, pulls hard for years. Now here's where I'll give you the straight word an old diesel man owes you. A turbo motor lives or dies on clean oil. That little turbo spins hot and fast, and dirty oil is what kills it early. So on any EcoBoost, whatever you do, don't stretch the oil changes to save a few dollars, because that's the one shortcut that turns a 300,000-mile truck into a $2,000 turbo repair before you've hardly begun. Change it early and often, and it'll reward you. Now the top 3 are all about one brand and one truth, and here comes the first of them. Number 3 is the Chevrolet Suburban. Rigs that pass 200,000 miles all share one thing, and it isn't magic, it's a durable frame under them. The Suburban has that in spades. The study put it among the most likely of all to reach 200,000, with 5 1/10% making that mark and 0.2% going beyond 300,000. It's basically a longer, roomier Tahoe with a standard V8, best-in-class room front to back, and here's a number that speaks loud. Consumer Reports found that 75% of Suburban owners would buy another one given the chance. When 3 out of 4 people who've lived with a rig for years say they'd do it again, that's about as honest a recommendation as you'll ever get. Buy a serviced one and drive it 2 decades. But it's not even the Chevy that tops this list. The top 2 are Toyotas, and the reason is a word the industry hopes you never learn. Number 2 is the Toyota Sequoia. You want to drive past 200,000 miles with no serious trouble? You can play the odds with most any SUV, or you can just buy a Sequoia and stack the deck. This is Toyota's full-size truck-based rig, and the number is staggering. 11 2/10% of the ones that changed hands had beaten 200,000 miles, and 0.4% had passed 300,000. Drive 15,000 miles a year, and a Sequoia gives you about 17 to 20 years of faithful service. Let that sink in. You could buy one with your first grandchild on the way and still be driving it when that child is old enough to borrow the keys. It's been outshined by newer, flashier rigs, and that's your bargain, because while folks chase the new thing, this old workhorse just keeps running and the price keeps sitting low. It shares much of its guts with that Tundra pickup, a truck men trust to work for a living, and that's exactly the point. Check the frame for rust. That's the one real weakness on the older ones. Look for a soft or crusty spot along the rails, and otherwise buy it and hold it for 20 years. And now the king, and here's where I have to tell you about that word. Number 1 is the Toyota Land Cruiser, and this is the one I teased at the start. Now let me say the word the whole car business would rather you never heard: planned obsolescence. It means a maker builds a rig with parts designed to wear out and fail on a schedule, so you're back buying another one right on time. It sounds wicked, and I'll tell you plain, it is not some grand conspiracy, it is just money. A rig that dies on schedule sells another rig. It started for real back in the 1920s, when the fellows selling cars figured out that a machine that lasts forever only sells once, and ever since, most of the industry is built to that math. But the Land Cruiser is the exception that proves it can be done right, because it was truly built to last a lifetime. The study found 16 3/10% of them still going past 200,000 miles against a segment average of about 1%. Read that again. And 1.5% are expected to pass 300,000. That is not an accident. That is a company that decided on this one rig to build the durablest thing they could and let it outlive everybody. Let me tell you about the one that made a believer out of me. A fellow towed a Land Cruiser into my bay years back, dusty old thing, and I about fell over when I read the odometer. 380,000 miles. Original engine, original transmission. He used it to run a ranch, and it had never once left him walking. I pulled apart engines with a third of those miles that were fit for scrap. That truck was still tight. The Land Cruiser stayed loyal to what an SUV was supposed to be, tough, capable, and honest. That's the whole loop, friend. 16% past 200,000, better than 380,000 on that ranch rig in my own shop, while the average SUV limps to the grave at half of the first number, all because somebody chose to build it right instead of building it to fail. Now here's the thing that ties every one of these together. None of them last by luck. They last because somebody built them on a real frame with a simple, stout engine, and then somebody serviced them on time. Both halves matter. The best truck on this list will still die young if you skip the oil, and the plainest one will see 300,000 miles if you don't. That's the part that's actually in your hands. Your not knowing which rigs were built to survive was never your fault. You were sold screens and horsepower numbers and lease deals, dressed up to look like progress, not the plain truth about what lasts. A man who came up in my father's day could look at a truck and know. We had that knowing bred out of us on purpose, so we'd keep coming back to the counter. But now you know. And whatever you do, don't let a fancy badge or a big glowing touchscreen talk you out of the plain, tough, boring rig that'll still be hauling your family when the fancy ones are folded flat in a scrapyard. That's the whole game, and you just took it back. Owning a rig that outlives the loan, that outlives the trend, that your grandkids could someday learn to drive on, that isn't just saving money, that's a man who can't be shut off, who doesn't have to ask anybody's permission to keep rolling. That's independence, plain and simple. And it's still for sale on any used lot in America if you know what to look for. So do me a favor and drop a comment below and tell me just two things. First, which of these 13 is parked in your driveway right now, and how many miles has it got on the clock? And second, tell me the highest mileage you have ever personally put on one vehicle, because I read every one of these and the numbers never stop amazing me. Thank you for spending this time with an old diesel man. Keep the old iron running, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.